Yep, it's Maridanee, and today we have a bit of a different video. So, as you can see from the title, I wanted to talk about my experience with an ectopic pregnancy and finding out that I have endometriosis. So, stick around if you're interested. So I'm making this video to raise awareness and make it something we can talk about, because I went through a lot of emotions when this happened, and it was only a few months ago, so it's still pretty raw. But essentially, I'll tell you the story, I'll tell you what happened. I was having all sorts of pain. I had my period twice within 2 weeks, and I thought it was a bit strange because that never happened to me before. It's not something that that normally happens. I do have quite bad period pain, and like often I'm on the floor and I can't get up because it's so painful. Otherwise, I have a pretty high pain threshold, so I'm pretty sure that it's bad, but I always thought it was my normal because it's always been like that. So I didn't think about, going to see anybody or really talking about it much, because I thought everyone just like had their own pain thing, and like this was my one. I just thought it was normal, just how it happened. So first of all, it's not. If you have excessive pain, please go and see someone, see a gynecologist, see a specialist, get referred, because it could be something more and you could just not be aware. So please, please, please go and see someone if you're thinking about it, you're worried about it, anything. Go and find out. It doesn't hurt to find out. So essentially, I was having quite bad pain, and then it was in my hip. Well, I thought it was my hip, which silly me, because I really probably should have paid more attention in school, because I didn't realize my ovaries were right there. Like, I'm gonna sound so dumb right now, but I literally thought they were like up here, like where my stomach is, but they're right like on your hips. I had no idea. Anyway, so I thought this was my hip, so I thought I'll take myself to the doctors. It's been like 4 or 5 days of this and it's really painful, like I can't sleep at all, so I'm gonna go and see someone. I went to my local doctor and she said, is there a chance that you could be pregnant? And I thought, no, I don't think so. And she was like, well, I'm just gonna do a pregnancy test just in case. And I said, okay. So I went and did the test, and I was freaking out at this stage because I thought, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Like, I'm not ready for this. This wasn't in my plan. It's total shock. I don't know what I'm gonna do. And then I went into the nurse's area, and the nurse was like, oh, are you doing a pregnancy test? And I was like, yeah, I am. And then she was like, what are you hoping for? And I, without even thinking, just said a negative. And she was like, oh, I meant like boy or girl. And I was like, yeah, this is not in my plan. Like, and I almost felt a little bit shamed by this woman who immediately just assumed that I wanted it and that I had planned it. But anyway, so that happened, and then she said, yes, it was positive. I went back to the doctor, and the doctor said to me, we're gonna call an ambulance now because I think that you're having an ectopic pregnancy, so we need to go and run some tests. So they popped me in a hospital bed, called an ambulance, and then I was taken in an ambulance for the first time in my entire life. To Ballarat-based hospital, where they looked after me, and I essentially got out of the ambulance, put in the emergency waiting room, and I sat there for 3.5 hours by myself. So I was kind of okay at that point. I thought, I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm fine right now, like I'm not really in much pain, I'm gonna be okay. I think it was just a lot of adrenaline at that time. Anyway, so eventually a nurse comes and gets me from the emergency waiting room and takes me through to a back entrance area, just like a consult room, and said that they're going to do some blood tests and they'll see how they go. And I said okay. So then she came back, and I am afraid of needles for one, and also terrified of the taking blood out. So that was an experience and a half, but she was fabulous and she did really well, really quick, and it was over, and I'm less scared now, so that's a positive. The male doctor came and saw me and told me to just take a seat in the waiting room because they had to wait for my blood test results to come back before they had a plan moving forward. So I thought, okay, so I went and sat in the waiting room. I sat in the waiting room by myself for 4 hours because this is during coronavirus and you can't have anyone come in with you, you can't have a support person, so it's just me by myself. And I'd rang my mum a few times and my boyfriend as well, and he was in the car park waiting for me because he couldn't come inside. And my mum had cried like 5 times. She was so stressed about me. And then finally my test results come back. They told me that I couldn't go to the bathroom because they might have to do an ultrasound, and then it turned out they weren't going to do an ultrasound, and they let me go after I'd waited for 2.5 hours, I guess, to go and pee. I really had to go. Anyway, so they took me back into the consult room, and he told me that it confirmed, my blood test confirmed that I was pregnant. It showed I was pregnant, and I was like 5 weeks-ish, because that was from my last period, like from that point onwards. So I find that out and I'm kind of freaking out and I don't know what to do. And then he says to me that he thinks I'm overreacting and that the pain probably isn't that bad and that I probably don't have an ectopic pregnancy and I should just be fine. But they wanted to do an ultrasound in the morning just to see. So I thought, okay, this doctor must know what he's talking about, but he's telling me it's not that bad, so maybe it's not that bad. I'll just go home. So then my boyfriend took me home. I'm still in pain. I went back the next morning for my 9 a.m. ultrasound. I went in, I had the first ultrasound. He didn't find a pregnancy at all, and I had to have an internal ultrasound as well. And he found the ectopic pregnancy, or the pregnancy, in my fallopian tube, my left fallopian tube. He also said that he found some cysts on my both of my ovaries. After I had my ultrasounds, he sent me back to the emergency waiting room. So I sat in there and I went up and spoke to the lady like he told me to and told her why I was there. And she said, oh, you know, that'll take a few hours, like you'll be here for a while. And I said, that's fine, I'll just sit and wait. And she was like, okay. So I had driven myself there with my mum. My mum was waiting in the car outside because, as I said, you can't have anyone come in with you, you can't have a support person. So my mum's sitting in the car park waiting for me to come back because it was meant to be one quick ultrasound and then I'm going. Anyway, not even 5 minutes go by of the hours that she said I would be waiting. She called me through and she said that they'd checked the results urgently and that they did find the ectopic pregnancy. They were able to confirm it on the scan. So they put me through to this room and she gave me the gown to put on, you know, the one with your ass out, and I had never put one on before. I didn't know how to do it, so she had to explain it to me. And then I had a doctor come down and see me. And she asked me what had happened and why I was there, and I explained, and she immediately like dismissed me and said, well, how do you know it's an ectopic pregnancy? Like, how would you know that? And I told her that they got the ultrasound results back and that's why I was sitting in the room. And then she was like, oh, okay. Didn't believe me at first. So that was, you know, interesting, I guess. Then I had the nurse come around and put an IV drip in my arm, which again, as I said before, I'm afraid of needles, so that was a nightmare for me. And she forgot to put the cap on the bottom, so it was just like bleeding out. I was just bleeding out onto the bed. And I didn't know that that was not supposed to happen, so I let it go for like half an hour, and then she came back and I was like, is this meant to happen? And she was like, no, and then she fixed it, so that was good. They did another round of blood tests that morning, and then the gynecologist came down to visit me, and he was a lovely guy. He was so nice. He did an internal examination, like a pap smear style one, which I'd also had never had before, so that was an experience in itself. But he was super quick, and you know, it's over with, so that was good. He checked me for everything, I guess, and he came back and said all clear, no worries. So he came down to give me my options, which was essentially, there was two. The first one was have emergency surgery and have my left fallopian tube removed. The second option was to have an injection. It had to be in the muscle, so I had to go in my butt, and it would mean that I would probably bleed for the next 3 weeks, he said. I have a bit of pain, but it should get rid of the pregnancy. So I decided to go with the injection because I thought we'd try that first, and then if the injection didn't work, then I could always have the surgery afterwards, which he said. He also said I should go back on the pill because the last year I haven't been on one after I had, not an experience, but I just suddenly gained a heap of weight, went over like the summer period last year, which was quite unusual for me. It was like 12 kilos worth, and it took me a really long time to lose that weight again, and it was after I'd changed pills. So I decided to stop taking the pill for the time being, and I wasn't, you know, didn't have any issues. I was off the pill, the one I was on previously. It was like a name brand, not a name brand one, sorry, a home brand one that I'd been given when I was in Sydney for a friend's wedding, instead of the one that I had asked for. So make sure people, if one works for you, then get the one that works. Don't get their home brand one or whatever, because it might be different. Like in my case, it was. Anyway, I stopped taking it, and my boyfriend even said to me that I cry way less, I'm way less upset, I'm more level-headed, I'm more logical. you know, I'm just kind of all around a happier person. So that's why I decided to stay off it for so long. But he suggested that I go on it because it will help manage the endo and also, you know, prevent this happening again, hopefully. Pregnancy. Be safe, people. So I find out my options. The nurse comes and gets me. She gives me the injection in my butt. They take the IV drip out and I drive myself home. Not even, like, that was it, and I was done. I was out. And so I just did, you know, rested for a few days, and then over the next 2 weeks I had to get blood tests every 3 days, which was a nightmare for me. I sat in the car and had panic attacks and was super anxious before having them because I was afraid, and I also couldn't have anyone come in with me and like hold my hand, talk me through it because of corona. So I had to do it all by myself, but I almost feel like I've come out stronger on the other side, and I don't know if I want to say thankful for that experience, but I think I learned a lot about myself as well during that time. So post that, it's been probably 2 months now since that happened. All good. I got the all clear. I've had follow-up ultrasounds as well. They think all's good in the hood, so we're okay, we're in the clear. The pain that I experience is almost worse. I don't know if I'm just more aware of it now, but the pain when I have my period, and during the month I get it as well, in my hips especially, well, where my ovaries are, in my uterus area, I guess the pain is worse. But yeah, I don't know if that's just me being aware of it now or if it's actually worse. So that's an interesting thing. I am back on the pill at the moment. I'm on Brenda. It's going well. I did notice in the first week, probably week to 2 weeks that I was taking, I just cried all the time. I was super emotional. I couldn't stop myself from crying. That has kind of calmed down now. It's kind of leveled out, which is good. Now that I know how I was when I was on it before, I can kind of manage it a bit better and think to myself, am I being irrational? Am I being illogical here? Do I need to cry about this? Like, is this actually a big issue? And that has kind of helped as well. So I'm still just managing. I wanted to come and talk about it today because I had so many people, like the people in the hospital, the nurses, not everybody, some of them were fabulous, but they all kind of looked at me like, oh, it's not that bad, like the pain isn't that bad, you don't know what you're talking about. And then when the other doctor told me that I couldn't possibly have an ectopic pregnancy because I just couldn't, he said. So those things, when the nurse told me that, I confirmed that I was pregnant and said, you know, what are you gonna do? You're gonna keep it? And like, oh, you're not in a position to keep it, like, can't you work it out? Almost kind of shamed me, like made me feel like I should have wanted to, but I'm 22 and I'm not ready, and I'm not in a position to do that. And then when it was confirmed ectopic, they were all like, oh, okay, like now you're allowed to not want it. And some people treated me like, oh, you should be so upset that it's an ectopic pregnancy, and oh, you know, because you would have wanted the baby. And I just kind of was like, oh, don't put that stigma onto people, because it's already hard enough. Like, I was having a meltdown by myself. I was so scared in the hospital. I was terrified by myself in emergency for the first time in my life, and I couldn't have anyone next to me, not my boyfriend, not my mum. I couldn't have anybody. I was by myself, and I had to have these things that, like, might sound trivial, but like, I'm terrified of needles, and I had to have so many needles, and I had to do it by myself, and I was going out of my mind and just trying to keep my emotions on the inside because I didn't want anyone to see me cry in the hospital, because that made me feel like I don't know, I just felt weak. And it was awful. It was one of the worst experiences of my life, not just the ectopic pregnancy side or finding out I have endo, but the being in a hospital by myself side of things too. So I just wanted to make this video and talk about my experience so that other people feel comfortable talking about their experiences, and just spread awareness, and people should be, you know, going to get checked, go see a gynecologist, go and find out what that pain is, or find out what that thing is, because I had no idea I had cysts, I had no idea I had endo, I had no idea that I even had an ectopic pregnancy at the time until after they did all the tests. And if my boyfriend hadn't have convinced me to go to the doctors, and my doctor hadn't have been so switched on, she was fabulous, she rang and checked on me afterwards as well, and I went back and saw her. which was amazing. If she hadn't been so thorough, it would have been a lot worse. I spoke to my mum afterwards and she said that she thought that I had an ectopic pregnancy when I explained my symptoms to her the night before I went to the doctors. She said that her mother had one and she went back and forth to the hospital constantly until it burst, and that's a lot worse. So I'm so glad that didn't happen in this case, but I can see how I was dismissed a lot, and the pain that I was feeling was dismissed as probably not that bad. I didn't know what I was talking about for a big part of it, and then I was kind of felt like I should have felt ashamed for not wanting to be pregnant. So yeah, there you go, there's some insight. I hope this helped you if you have been in a similar situation. These things are okay, they should be okay to talk about, they shouldn't be taboo. This is a thing that happened to me. I didn't intend for it to happen, I didn't choose for it to happen, it just happened, and a lot of things like that do just happen. So I don't think anyone should feel any shame in making a choice for themselves or having something like this happen to them and not be upset that it wasn't, you know, a normal pregnancy. And again, on that, it is completely valid if you are upset, if this is something you wanted or would have wanted, but it wasn't in my case, and I felt like a lot of people treated me as if I should have wanted it and I didn't. So yeah, there you go guys, that was my experience. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, or feel free to private message me, my Instagram, my Twitter, whatever you want to do. I am here for you if you want to talk about things. There you go. Bye guys.